In the Virginia Beach shooting, one of the reasons that 12 people were killed so quickly was that the shooter used high-capacity magazines, magazines that would contain dozens and dozens of rounds of ammunition, magazines that made the rescue operation conducted by brave first responders extremely difficult. We say we care about our first responders. When I talk to our first responders, they say, if you care about us, do something to restrict high-capacity magazines. Don't you want us to be able to stop a shooting in progress? Don't you want us to be able to stop a murder and keep the homicides and carnage down? It's hard to do it when we're up against somebody with such a massive amount of firepower. If you care about first responders, if you want us to stop crimes in process, then enable us to put meaningful restrictions on high-capacity magazines. And I think that was a powerful lesson from the Virginia Beach shooting, that had the magazines been smaller, they could have stopped the carnage earlier. There may still have been those injured or killed, but it would have been less of a toll. And Mr. President, I just want to point this out before moving to the next issue. As a society, we tolerate high-capacity magazines. Many in this chamber are hunters. Many in this chamber are familiar with hunting laws in Virginia. As in most states, there are rules that have been on the books for years. If you hunt a deer in Virginia, we limit the amount of rounds that you can have in a rifle or shotgun. We put a limit, and that limit has been accepted for decades. Why? Why do we limit the size of magazines in hunting animals? Because it wouldn't be fair. It wouldn't be sportsmanlike. It wouldn't be humane to allow an animal to be hunted with a magazine of near unlimited capacity. If it is not humane to hunt an animal with a massive magazine, then why allow near unlimited magazines to be used to hunt human beings? This is a rule that we accept, and we should accept it for weapons designed to hurt humans as well. The second tragedy in Virginia occurred when I was governor a number of years ago, the tragic shooting at Virginia Tech. And I won't go into it because I'll segue when I talk about a hero, but the shooting at Virginia Tech happened because of a weakness in the background check system. The individual, the young man, Sung-Wee Cho, who killed 32 people, was prohibited from having a weapon because he'd been adjudicated mentally ill and dangerous, but weaknesses in the background check system enabled him to get a weapon anyway. We learned a powerful and painful lesson that day, which is if your background check system has loopholes and gaps, disasters will result. And so I join with my colleagues who say House Bill 8 that's come from the House, that's a comprehensive background check system bill that keeps weapons out of the hands of people who are dangerous to themselves or others, is something that we should absolutely pass. And last, let me just tell the story about an American hero. And I've told this story on the floor before, but not for a number of years. And I want to tell this story because I think everybody should know this individual's name. The name of the hero I just want to describe is a man named Liviu Librescu. Liviu Librescu was one of the 32 people who was killed at Virginia Tech on April 16, 2007. Let me tell you about him. He was born in Romania, and he was Jewish during the Holocaust. When Germany occupied Romania and began to take over the country, Jews were persecuted, and Liviu Librescu, then a young child, his family was sent to concentration camps, and many of them perished just because they were Jewish. Liviu, as a young child, was hidden by relatives and friends and miraculously managed to survive the Nazi campaign of anti-Semitism against Jews. Many Jews left Romania because they felt like their neighbors and friends didn't protect them, but Liviu Librescu decided to stay. I'm a Romanian, and I'm going to stay in Romania and try to make my country a peaceful place where Jews can live in peace with their fellow men and women. He ran into a second problem. He went to the university. He was a talented scientist and engineer, but then the Soviet Union moved in and essentially occupied Romania. And they punished him because he was Jewish and because he wouldn't join the Communist Party. He was a world-renowned engineer, published in journals around the world, but first they prohibited his ability to travel to academic conferences, and then they prohibited his right to publish. And over the years, the Soviet-dominated government of Romania took away virtually every right he had he started to try to figure out a way to emigrate to Israel. And in the early 1970s, at a time when some Eastern European Jews were allowed to emigrate to Israel, Liviu Librescu finally escaped Soviet-dominated communism after having survived the Holocaust and moved to Israel. His dream. He was teaching at the Technion in Israel, one of the premier scientific engineering institutions in the world. And he got an offer after a few years to come be a visiting professor in Blacksburg, Virginia, at Virginia Tech for 1 year. And he came in 1985. This Romanian Jew, professor at an Israeli technical university, came to Blacksburg, Virginia, in the mountains of Appalachia for 1 year, and he fell in love with Blacksburg. And he stayed in Blacksburg at Virginia Tech for the rest of his career. On April 16, 2007, Liviu Librescu, now 22 years in Blacksburg, was teaching an engineering class in one of the two buildings that was the subject of the attack by the shooter Seung-Hui Cho. The morning of April 16, 2007, he had undergrads and graduates in the class. When he heard shooting start in the classroom, he instinctively knew he should protect his students. Liviu Librescu is now over 70 years old, this Holocaust survivor. And he went and he stood in front of the classroom door on the second floor of this building, and he told the students, "You've got to jump out the window. I'm going to do everything I can to protect your life. Jump out the window." He stood there in front of the classroom door, absorbing bullet after bullet. Every student of Liviu Librescu's was able to escape from that building save one. There was one student who couldn't get out in time, who let others go first. Liviu Librescu was killed. One student in his class was killed. But all of these other young people, he saved their life. April 16, 2007 was a day that was a very special day in Liviu Librescu's life. Most in the classroom wouldn't have known it. That day was Yom HaShoah, which is a day that occurs every year in the Hebrew calendar, and it is a day that is celebrated and commemorated in Israel. It's a day to commemorate, remember, never forget the Holocaust. That's what Yom HaShoah was. Liviu Librescu, a Holocaust survivor, knew what that day was. He knew what it meant. And he made a choice. Because the commemoration of the Holocaust is not just remembering the violent perpetrators, and it's not just remembering the victims. It's also remembering that there wouldn't have been millions of victims had there not been so many bystanders. That's what Yom HaShoah is about. It's about victims, it's about perpetrators, but it's also about bystanders. And that the Holocaust would never have happened had there not been so many bystanders. What Liviu Librescu decided to do that day was not be a bystander. As violence was occurring around him, he decided, I will not be a bystander. I will try to take an action to save someone's life. Think about it. He survived the Holocaust. Think about it. He survived the Soviet takeover of his country, and then he came to this nation and loved it, but he couldn't survive the carnage of American gun violence. But he did at least decide he wouldn't be a bystander. That is what we're called to do in the Senate of the United States, not be bystanders. We do not have to demonstrate the courage of Liviu Librescu and place our body in front of a classroom door and absorb bullet after bullet to save somebody else's life. I don't think I would have the courage to do that. I don't know how many of us would. We're not called to make a sacrifice of that magnitude. But I do think we're called to make some sacrifices. And I do think we're called not to be bystanders. And if we are going to be true to that calling, we have to be willing to take up and debate and vote on common sense measures to keep Americans safe from gun violence. Thank you, Mr. President. With that, I yield the floor.